Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make music like Mndsgn. Now, as usual, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and all that stuff from this video in the description on my Bandcamp. It's the first link, you can't miss it. And yeah, let's dive in. So, the first layer here is this chord synth, which sounds like this. And so what we have going on here musically is basically, it's just a bunch of major and minor 7th chords with a few little extra ones mixed in here. So, as you can see, we just have some regular major 7th chords here. Nothing really too crazy there. If you don't know what a major 7th chord is, I would recommend looking it up, because if you want to make this style, it's very relevant. But basically, a major 7th chord is just a regular major triad, and then you add the 7th, a major 7th on top. So, in this case, it would be G. Fun fact, the major 7th is always just going to be one semitone down from the root and then an octave up. So that's an easy way to remember it. And so yeah, so that's a major 7th chord, that's a major 7th chord, and then here we have a regular 7th chord. So we just have a minor 7th actually on top of this regular major chord. And then here it's actually a major 7th chord, and then I've added this thing on. So I said we had some minor 7th chords, I was wrong, my bad. But yeah, so that's just got that extra voice on top, just to sort of bring it back home to that one chord, because just this on its own just didn't really quite do it enough, so I wanted to add that little voice on top of there. And yeah, so that just kind of takes it back in. So as far as like music theory stuff goes, like I said, I'd recommend looking at sort of like more jazzy kind of hip-hop style chords. As far as the sound goes, for this synth, it's pretty simple. It's this little thing I made an operator. Basically what it is it is a triangle wave with a little bit of FM from a sine wave, which is up 4 semitones. So you can hear that's what's adding that kind of like Rhodesy type of sound. And then I have a filter on there with a little bit of an envelope, because this has a lot of harmonic content. So I wanted to sort of dull that down a little bit with the filter, and then the envelope just kind of gives it a smoother sort of decay. And then I just have this LFO on here, which has a little bit of amount, and it's just giving it like that pitch LFO. I also have it on the filter a little bit, and it's just giving it like a more warbly sort of sound. And then after that, I just have an erosion, so pretty simple there. It's just giving it a very slight bit crushing. So the next synth sounds like this. This is also just playing these same chords. As you can hear, a little bit more pronounced on this one. These chords are strummed a little bit, so to speak. So you can see they don't all the notes don't start at the same time. And that's what gives it that kind of like well kind of sound, if that makes any sense going into it. Now this one's pretty simple. It's just two saw waves going into a low pass filter with a little bit of an envelope. And then I have some vibrato and some unison on here, giving it that kind of like chorusy vintage sound. And then after that, I just have a chorus, which is set like this, and a saturator, which I gave it a little bit of drive, and then I used the analog clip to sort of dial that back and just keep the like grit and power that the drive gives you in there. So you can hear without the color, it's a little bit rough around the edges, so that just kind of cleans it up. But you still get that like saturated kind of, like I said, like gritty, powerful sound. And then on top of that, I just have this redux, just giving it a little bit of bit crushing. As you can hear, I was trying to go for a lot of bit crushing with this one, because it's important with Mndsgn's sound. Like, he has a lot of really old school kind of vintage sounds going on in his tracks, and a lot of that is caused by bit crushing. So anyway, the next sound we have here is this lead, which sounds like this. And the way that I made this is, it is a square wave. And what I've done is I have a little bit of pulse width modulation going on. So you can see I have the pulse width set there. And then we have the LFO1 modulating that just slightly, just to give it some movement. Because on its own, without that, it was just a little boring sounding, so that movement just keeps it going throughout the track. And then after that, I just have this low pass filter with a little bit of an envelope. You can see it set like that. I don't think I touched the amp envelope. Yeah, I did not. Didn't really need to. And then just like those chords above, I have some vibrato and some unison. Which, as you can hear, are giving it that kind of like old school synth brass type of sound. So after that, I have this a bit warmer, which is a preset I've used quite a bit for Ableton Saturator. You can see it here. It's just a nice sort of little saturation. I just put it on there to sort of beef the sound up a little bit. And I really wanted this one to have that kind of like old school vibe, so I think the saturation was a great way to get that and sort of make it a little bit less clean and digital. So the next thing I have on here is this echo, which I set up pretty simply. Basically, all I've done is I've set the times to eighth notes. And then the left ear is on notes and the right ear is on dotted, so that's why you get that kind of like stereo delay effect. Which was good, because since this lead is kind of, I don't want to say the most prominent element, but definitely like, it's the lead. It's like the main kind of, it's sort of like the lyrics. So I wanted to give this a big stereo image, so it would kind of be just a little bit wider and a little bit more prominent. So yeah, and then I have a little bit of reverb on there, and I set the feedback like that and the dry wet there. I didn't give it too much dry wet because I didn't want it to be, washed out. But I just gave it enough for the effect to be very pronounced and audible. So then after that, I just have this low pass filter, which is actually pretty important. So here's without the low pass filter. So it sounds cool, right? But when you put the low pass filter on, that's when it goes like full 80s cassette mode. So all I'm doing with this low pass filter is cutting off the very high highs and giving a bit of a resonance boost. If you've watched my lo-fi house videos, you know I do this quite a bit in there as well. But this is a great way to give your sounds that kind of like old cassette sound, because the thing is, part of what makes that sound what it is this. It's literally just cutting off the high end a lot of the time. So by doing that with a low pass filter and then giving it that little resonance boost right at the cutoff point, you get this nice kind of like I said, just like old vintage kind of sound. So yeah, that's how I did that. Now the next sound here is this bass. It's very simple. It's just playing these things that are in tune with the note, with the chords. There's a little bit more of a solid hit, and all it is basically just a saw wave. I set it like this in operator, and then I have a little filter on it with an envelope just to give it that kind of like pluck. And yeah, so then after that, all I have is this redux, just giving it a little bit of bit crushing. And yeah, pretty simple there. Again, just playing these notes that kind of like fit with the chords. So the next thing I will show you are the drums, which sound like this. So the way I made these, as you can hear, it's a pretty sparse beat. It's not really a whole lot of elements, but they're playing together nicely. So the way I kind of programmed this beat, as you can see, is it's just sort of like this chill kind of like 80s funk type of beat, I guess. I don't know. It has like that boogie kind of feel. And so the first thing here is this kick, pretty simple. Just like a nice, powerful drum machine kick. There is processing on this because I have some on the group, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But I didn't do anything extra to it, just because, I mean, it was pretty powerful on its own. This is really just a matter of getting it, leveled out and having it be kind of, not the loudest thing in the mix, but loud enough that it's really coming through. So the next thing I have here is this little clave, which actually has that ping pong delay. But this just sounds like this. So this is a pretty subtle thing. This kind of percussion I really see more as like punctuation, if anything. It's just giving it a little bit of space in between the kicks and the shakers and all that, and the snares. So yeah, it's just a pretty simple clave sample, and then I put it into this reverb to give it some space. The next thing here is a snare, which sounds like this. So I've converted this snare to mono because the original sample had a little bit of a weird stereo image, and so I just converted it to mono using the left ear. This is very easy to do. All you have to do is get a utility and just click on this little drop-down thing and either select left or right. And there you go. It's in mono. Then I have a little bit of a reverb on there. Nothing too long, but it just gives it a little bit of space. So So yeah, so the next thing is just this little clap, pretty simple. It just kind of sits in there around here. Just gives it a little bit of like a fill kind of effect, I guess. And this is just a simple clap sample, and then I have it going into this echo here, which is set like this, so it's on 16th notes. And yeah, it just gives it a little space, nothing too crazy there. And then I have this shaker. So the shaker sounds like this. Pretty simple. Again, it's kind of like the clave. It's just like, I like to think of it as like punctuation if this was a sentence. Just gives it a little bit of a groove. So as far as processing on the group of the drums goes, here is the drum group with no processing. So as you can hear, pretty dry and clean sounding. So the first thing I have here is a saturator, which has a little bit of drive, and I'm using the analog clip pretty heavily. And you can hear that's really like giving everything a lot of grit and beefing everything up and just giving it that nice kind of like saturated power, I guess. Like the power you get when you saturate things. And you can hear too, it's kind of like working with the shaker and the kick at times. Because you can hear they're a little bit like sort of distorting each other when they play together, but in this like nice, very analog kind of way. And this gets accentuated by the next thing, which is this compressor, which sounds like this. So, if you guys know me, you know that I usually try to stay away from compression in most forms, but in this case, I think it helped the drum group, and it's not really doing that too much. If you look at this little threshold meter, it's only really activating on the very like top of the frequency range of the dynamics, and just cutting out a little bit of that you know very high end kind of like I said dynamic stuff. Like it's mostly just sort of flattening it out a little bit, but still keeping dynamics in there. And then I have the ratio up a little bit. I turned off makeup gain. I have the threshold there. And I gave it a bit of attack as well because I didn't want it to mess up the transients. If you don't know the transient, it's just the very start of the sound. Like, it's literally that on the kick. And what can happen with compression a lot of times is it'll make those kind of flat. Like, you want those to be louder than everything. If you look at the sample, you can see this little section is a lot louder than this. And so what this attack does is it makes the compression take a second to kick in, and then when the transients play, it doesn't really affect them. So that's really it for this video. Like I said, not too much to remember, just those like jazzy chords, the cool melodies, and then doing the synths, kind of like trying to make them sound old and vintage. And then with the drums, just trying to give them like a pretty sparse beat, and you know, giving them a bit of grit with saturation and the compression working together. And yeah, so make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and maybe even share this video if it really helped you out. Once again, you can get the sample pack from this video in the description, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another tutorial.